Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Dinda Azani and my student ID number is 21129371 from session 0633. In this video, I will tell you what the cultural differences between Indonesia and Japan. And this video aims to fulfill my English course midterm exam excitements. Each country must have different cultures and customs, as well as Japan and Indonesia. In the past, Japan and Indonesia had a separate relationships. Even so, the two countries have different cultures and are able to be unique for the relationships between the two countries. There are some cultural differences between Japan and Indonesia that are interesting to know. The cultural differences between Japan and Indonesia can be seen from various sides. Here, I will explain some of the cultures that exist in Indonesia and Japan. Number 1. Culture of respect for others. Each country has its own way of respecting others, as well as Japan and Indonesia. In Japanese culture, the culture of bowing is called ojige, as a sign of respect. In Japan, bowing is their way of respecting others. This is usually done when you want to apologize, say thank you, and as a greeting at ceremonial or other formal events. There are two types of ojigi that you need to know, namely ritsure, namely ojigi, which is done standing up. The second type of ojigi is zare, which is doing ojigi while sitting. There are three types of ojigi based on their intensity. So, the longer and deeper the ojigi, the deeper the feelings you want to express. Indonesia also has a way of respect that is similar to Japan. The difference is the Indonesian people bend the body with the right hand down and the left hand bent behind the waist. This is usually done as a sign of excuse when passing by an older person. Next, number 2, handshake culture. Actually, the handshake tradition is carried out in both countries, both Japan and Indonesia. However, there are still cultural differences between Japan and Indonesia in terms of how they shake hands. The difference is that in Indonesia, shaking hands is a common thing to do when meeting people. In Japan, shaking hands is not a common thing to do, but the culture of handshakes is done at international events. Next, number 3, eating culture. Japanese food always maintains the authentic taste of food. For example, sushi or sashimi. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, it is not customary to eat raw food, as is done in Japan. Before eating, Japanese people usually always clap a little cold gasho, then say itadakimasu, which means happy eating. Then, after they finish eating, they said gochiso susuma deshita to show their gratitude to the cook. For Indonesians, they pray according to their respective beliefs before and after eating. Then, in Japan, there is a culture of its own when it comes to eating noodles. In Japan, when they eat ramen, they usually make a sound when they sip the noodles or the soup. This is done to appreciate the chef that the food is delicious. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, we are not allowed to make a sound when we are eating, whatever the food is, because it is considered impolite. Next, number 4, drinking culture. In Japan, there is a culture when drinking tea called sado. Sado is divided into two types. The first is ochakai, a tea ceremony that can be said to be less formal. Ochakai is usually done as a celebration of graduation or success by inviting close friends or relatives. Then, the second is chaji. This chaji is very formal and can be said to be sacred and can last more than 4 hours. In Indonesia, There is no culture or tradition of drinking tea with strict regulation like in Japan, so enjoying tea can be more relaxed. Next, number 5, culture in transportation. As you know, Indonesia is famous for its traffic density, which is filled with public transportation and private vehicles. Many public vehicles, such as angkot, stop in the middle of the road to pick up and drop off passengers. So, traffic jams often occur which make people emotional. In contrast to Japan, people in Japan prefer transportation that does not cause excessive pollution. They are very obedient to not cause pollution and also have adequate transportation in the form of trains such as MRT and Shinkansen. In addition, the car tax in Japan is much higher than in Indonesia. Therefore, we often see school children and adults in Japan using bicycles to carry out activities. And last one, number 6, naming culture. In Indonesia itself, not all people or tribes in Indonesia have a family name tradition. There are only certain tribes that have family names. For example, the Sumatran, Kalimantan, or Sulawesi tribes. That way, with the family name, it can be estimated which tribe they come from. Like the Batak tribe, which has a well-known surname, for example, Nasution, Sembiring, or Hutapea. In addition, the naming culture in Indonesia is also often taken from the influence of religion. For example, for Muslims, there is an element of Muhammad or Abdullah, while Catholics use baptismal names such as Margareta, Abigail, etc. While the naming culture in Japan consists of 2 parts, namely the family name and the first name. So, after a baby is born, his name must be registered at the Guyakusho or government office, no later than 14 days after birth. Everyone in Japan has a surname, with the exception of the imperial family. The difference between Japanese and Indonesian culture in terms of the next naming is in terms of civil registration. In Japan, surnames are required to be officially registered in the civil registry. In Indonesia, surnames are not allowed to be included on birth certificates. So, when a married woman, her surname will follow her husband's name. However, now there are also many career women in Japan who still maintain their family name. Whereas in Indonesia, a woman will not change according to her husband's surname. Okay, that's about the daily culture of Indonesia and Japan. Interesting, isn't it? Apparently, the 2 countries have many differences, starting from cultivations, attitudes, eating and drinking culture to mass transportation. Although the differences between the 2 countries are quite contrasting, that is what makes each country unique. Hopefully what I say in this video can add to your insight about everyday culture in Japan and also in Indonesia. Thanks for watching my video. Stay healthy everyone. Thank you so much.